in My Hero Academia chapter 369, we're presented right away with a very interesting situation. And if you want full details on the chapter, you can go watch my video titled Deku's 120% Smash Fails, because that is the full spoiler video for the spoilers this week. But in this video, we're actually going to be concocting a little bit of a theory, because I had an immediate thought when I saw the opening pages of chapter 369, and I want to go over that with you guys. So in chapter 369, we see the chapter open up with a flashback to All For One and the second One For All user. And All For One is holding the second One For All user by his neck. He catches a bullet telekinetically and all this stuff. All this stuff goes on pretty much, but it's this flashback scene of the two of them together, clearly from the very end of the second user's battle, right? This is probably the second user's final moments. And now every time we've seen All For One throughout the series, he's either been smiling with a big giant gleeful smile on his face, or he's happy about how overwhelmingly great his plans are going, how everything is going according to his plans. And planning is definitely a constant with All For One. We've seen that he does make a plan and then 100 parallel plans for if that plan doesn't go right, and then plans for those plans. He is a very well planned out guy. But here actually what we see is really quite strange. You see, when All For One is holding the throat of the second One For All user, there's just this really dejected look in his eyes as tears flow from them, and he holds the second One For All user by the neck with what seems like a really tight grip. You can really see the detail in his hands, and I feel like that's telling us he's really strangling the hell out of the second user. And now that we know what the second quirk user's quirk is, right, we know that he did have to be a menace to a certain extent for All For One, because All For One was reminded of him when Bakugo was finally able to speed blitz Shigaraki for the first time, right? And now we know that's because, you know, transmission is a speed-based quirk, and the second user probably did manage to blitz All For One with items that he shot out of his little blasters on his arms. So it makes sense for me for All For One to be grabbing the second quirk user so strong, right? Because he's definitely not trying to let him go. And we also know that All For One needs physical contact to steal a quirk, right? So he's probably also stealing the second's quirk here, which really raises the question, when he killed the actual One For All users, like, did he get versions of their quirk? But I guess even if he did, they wouldn't be the powered up versions that they are nowadays because of One For All. But getting back to the core question at hand here, All For One is crying, and the second One For All user is actually smiling in his final moments. And we get a very, very small look at what seems to be like the embers of One For All kind of billowing out from a little flame in the center, with the second user smiling and All For One kind of making a shocked reaction face. And I do think that in this scene where the second user is being choked by All For One, that of course the second user has already given the quirk on to the third user, right, who's no longer in the area and is gonna have to fight All For One at a later point. So that's one big reason for the second user to smile, because he knows, hey, I don't even have One For All on me right now, man. I'm just buying time for the third user to get away. You know, you lost here. Even if you take me out, even if you took out all my allies, the quirk is going to continue on. We're going to keep pushing it forward, and one day we're going to defeat you. But I believe that the reason that All For One is crying isn't because he couldn't get his hands on One For All or take it from this second user or anything like that. I think the reason that he's crying is because I believe the second quirk user actually killed the first quirk user, Yoichi. As we've been told by Gran Torino, sometimes death can be a form of salvation. And we know that All For One kept his brother locked up for a very, very long time. He was very weak. He was keeping him alive basically in this cellar, and then he gave him the quirk that would then go on to create One For All. And we can debate whether or not you think All For One knew that he would be creating One For All when he did that. I think honestly that he did, because I believe that All For One is able to look at a person and know what quirk they have. But even putting that thought aside, right, All For One, let's say, accidentally created One For All, and we see later on at some point the second user and third user of One For All come and save the first user from the basement or whatever area that he's locked in. But after that, we really have no idea about what the first user's life was like outside of that room. We do know that at some point he did give his quirk over to the second user, but at that point, I mean, other than being a good friend to have around and a good source of information about All For One to a certain extent, the first user presented a really, really big liability, I'm sure, right? Because All For One, I don't think would ever give up trying to hunt his brother down and get his brother back. After all, that was his last remaining family member, and that was the one person in the series whose quirk he never tried to take himself, right? Like, he never tried to take his brother's quirk, even though he feels like every other quirk out there is his. Really, what All For One wants more than anything is for his brother to rule along his side. And we saw All For One live for so long. Honestly, if he would have gotten that wish, it really would have been that much worse for society having basically two All For Ones around, sort of like we have right now. But that's also possibly why All For One has Shigaraki in the first place, because Shigaraki with the long white hair does end up looking just like All For One. So now All For One can kind of live out that fantasy of having his brother by his side with All For One, and then he could try to take One For All, right? That kind of seems like that was part of the plan before the whole rewind and everything situation happened with All For One. But that plan, I feel like, goes as far back as the first and second user's actual lifetimes, and I think that eventually the second user would have had to kill the first user, and I think everyone in that situation would have been aware that if All For One gets his hands on the first user, he's gonna take him back, and then he's gonna hunt down the One For All user, take One For All from them, and put it back inside the first user, and then there really isn't gonna be any sort of progress made here. Everything is gonna be for nothing. So the only thing that they can do to make sure that that never happens and that All For One doesn't ever get the one thing that he seemingly wants is to get rid of Yoichi. Because we know that All For One probably never would have killed his own brother, right? We know that he never would have taken out his own brother. No matter what, he would have tried to capture him and get the One For All quirk back inside of him. Even if he had to like extend his life or do whatever he had to, he found out a way to do it for himself, he would have been able to do that. I definitely think the second user is smiling because he killed the first user. And even though they were friends, and even though he wouldn't have wanted to do that, he understands, hey, I took away the thing that you wanted, right? There's no way for you to win here without crawling through all of history trying to take this quirk now. So enjoy, I'm gone, my role is done here. I'm sure at that time he didn't know that he would end up being a vestige in One For All, but my job is done here. I took everything from you just like you tried to take everything from me, but at least on my side, I know we still have hope. And the good thing is the first user and the second user and all the other users were able to meet again in the vestige world, but that is a really touching send-off if that is what happened. We haven't seen the transfer of the quirk between the first user and the second user, or how they even knew how to transfer the quirk in the first place. And we haven't seen the transfer between the second user and the third user, I believe, right? Though I do believe we've seen the transfer between the third and the fourth. So that is pretty much my idea about why All For One is crying while he's choking the second user, right? Probably getting ready to take his life. And that's because I believe the second user of One For All killed the first user of One For All to keep him away from All For One and take away the possibility of All For One stealing One For All and putting it back into his brother, or just taking the quirk for himself, kind of putting things back at square one. So let me know what you think about this idea. Do you think the second user killed the first user? And on this channel soon, we're going to do another video talking about what I think is going on between All For One and all these different lights that popped up at the very end of chapter 369. We're going to talk about it. We're going to try to figure out what's going on. Is he creating his own version of One For All? What's happening there? But I hope you enjoyed today's video about this weird theory I have about the first user and the second user. And apparently, My Hero Academia isn't even going on break next week like was first reported when the spoilers came out. So we will probably find out what's going on if this next week, if we do cut away to that again. And if not, I do expect to learn more about all the different vestiges and all the different battles of All For One inside of the vestige world, right? When we do go into the vestige world and we have Deku attempting to save Tenko. So it's Vocal Pineapple for now. That's all I've got. I'll see you guys later with another fresh upload, possibly tomorrow. And yeah, peace.